Yes, everybody, welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or, of course, if you are watching on our fast-growing YouTube channel, that's Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, for another episode, I should say, of the UNC Football Show. It's our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ, we got another fun show ahead, a lot of topics to hit on, some breaking news topics in a lot of ways as well, which we're going to hit on right now. We'll also hit on some other stuff from Mack Brown's press conference earlier this week about the signees and some of the transfers they picked up as well. So we'll hit on that a little bit later in the show. But I want to start with the news that broke. We're recording this on Wednesday evening, and this is the news that broke earlier on Wednesday afternoon. As UNC announced that they have mutually parted ways with Dré Bly, the cornerbacks coach for the Tar Heels, over the last really since Mack Brown came in. Back for the 2019 season. So I've been with them all the way, but they have mutually decided to part ways. I'm just going to read the quote that UNC did put out from Mack Brown real quickly, and then I'll kick it to you, AJ. This is Mack right here. We all love Dre Bly and his appreciation and what it means for the University of North Carolina as a Hall of Famer and an unbelievable advocate for the program and an excellent coach. Dre and I mutually agreed to part ways so that he could explore other opportunities in the coaching profession. We appreciate everything he's done for the program over the last few years and wish him nothing but the best moving forward. So, I think when you look at some of the production this year from the corners, maybe some of the lack of the development over the last couple of years, and when you look at just the amount of guys in that room that left, particularly since the season ended, it always kind of seemed like a change might be inevitable. It always seemed like a change might be necessary, and we've now seen one. So what are your thoughts on the news about Dre Bly leaving North Carolina?
Well, first, every time I was asked about Bly, my standard response was, we really don't know 100% for sure how much of the issue defensively was his coaching the corners, because if you don't get a pass rush and you don't apply much conventional pressure, it stresses the corners so much, and it kind of limited how they were able to play sometimes. People have said, why don't you ask Gene Chizik about why they play up why they don't play up with the corners and, a little bit of press coverage. And we have, and Gene always said, look, you got to play back a little bit, because if you're not getting the pressure, you have to try to keep everything in front of you and eliminate and minimize the catastrophic. So because of that, I think it was a little difficult at times to gauge the corners, but the aggregate over time is kind of where I come from on this. And also some of the stuff I've heard the last several days about Bly and the fact that there were maybe some efforts made to find him a spot somewhere else, whether in the NFL or at some other schools. I know that I'm not going to name the schools right now. I don't think that's fair to them or to Dre, but some smaller schools that are regional, that would be an opportunity for him to go and continue to learn his craft. You can become a really good coach teaching at Slippery Rock as much as you can at Alabama. It's teaching is teaching. So I would have been surprised a couple of weeks ago, but given some of the things I've heard the last 5 or 6 days, I'm not so surprised now. Mm-hmm. And honestly, football's about winning. It's about numbers. Numbers help you win. And the numbers here with the interceptions is mind-boggling. And I teased you about it before we started recording.
You got me intrigued, AJ.
But I'm going to do it now. In the last 4 seasons, Carolina intercepted 42 passes. Okay, the breakdown. And I would like anybody who's listening to this right now or watching this, think in your mind, 42 interceptions over the last 4 seasons. How many do you think were by cornerbacks? At the time, they were cornerbacks.
I said under 10, by the way, guys. I said under 10.
Giving you a few seconds to kind of think about it, okay? All right, here we go. Safeties, 18.
Okay.
Linebackers, 11. Nickels, 4. DEOLB, Tamon Fox, 1. Corners, 8.
Wow.
8 interceptions in 4 seasons by the corners for a team that faced a lot of passes. Lots of quarterbacks throwing the ball, chucking it around. High-scoring games, lots of snaps on defense. Remember, Mack talked a lot this year about defense on the field too much. There were a lot of games that Carolina would score quickly, and Tar Heels would have maybe 15 fewer plays in a game, but have more yards because of how prolific they were at times, especially in 2020. So 8 interceptions by corners.
Wow.
And 3 were by Duck this year. Remember, Duck had one in the bowl game. I think Chapman may have had one in that bowl game too, if I recall correctly, the Temple game. So it's not much.
No.
And I think that ultimately, Mac said, and this is what was so impressive about Monday's press conference, because people have said they want to hear Mac, say something emphatically. They want to come out, they want to hear a little bit of meat. Well, Max said, look, I didn't come back to win 9 games, which you and I have talked about during the course of the year. I want to win. I want to win more. I want to do whatever I can to win. And he was asked about coaching changes. He said, I want to win. I'm going to talk to Gene Chizik. We're going to discuss each assistant on that side of the ball, and then we'll have conversations with them. And the bottom line is I want to win. So if you got to make changes, got to win. Now, I had a source we talked about in last week's pod, an exceptional source tell me that Tim Cross wouldn't be fired because there would be a mass exodus. That doesn't mean Cross isn't going to move on, because there are ways of churning that wheel without saying you're fired and ticking people off. With Bly, the mutual agreement I think is probably accurate. I think Dre recognized that maybe it's time to go, flap your wings elsewhere outside of this Carolina nest, which if he's going to have a long career, it's probably the best thing for him to do. As far as someone else on that side of the ball being moved, I think the most likely one would be Tim Cross. And I do know that some schools have shown interest, one in particular in a state that he used to coach in. And I asked Mac the other day about, because he was asked a question about possible coaching changes. And then I asked a follow-up saying, well, what about guys that are showing interest in other programs? And he said, look, he'll tell them, if I deem you worthy of X number of dollars and someone else thinks you're worthy of more dollars than that, and I'm not going to pay you that, then you need to go. Yeah. So it could be a situation where someone might offer him more money than what Mac says his performance justifies him making. And that would be kind of a way of moving somebody out. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm just giving you a scenario.
Yeah.
So, but I do know there's some interest in him. And if there is another move on that side of the ball, my guess is that would be it. And that's the one I've kind of thought all along. If something happens, it's probably there. But I don't think it's going to be something that Mac just says, you're gone. Gene says, you're gone. I just don't see that happening in that manner. They will make sure that if he moves on, he would do it more on his own without them tugging at the pant leg super, super hard.
Yeah.
That last comment right there is not in any inside information at all. That's just my read on things.
I know Mac mentioned, but I want to ask you this before we move on to more about the press conference. I know Mac mentioned during that press conference, I think someone asked him about kind of the timetable in terms of making these changes. He kind of came out and made a comment that didn't necessarily sound like he was in a immediate hurry, which is a surprise in some ways, because we've seen Mac in the past when it comes to getting rid of coaches. Even I know this is a little bit different of a situation where a guy not like Jay Bateman, where he was kind of, for lack of a better word, kind of fired, mutually decided to part ways with Dré Bly and interest from other people with Tim Cross, so he might decide to go elsewhere. Is there any kind of timetable that you know of on when you want these got any final decisions on coaching staff to be made? Because it seems like, as we've seen from Mac, it's stuff he likes to get done pretty quickly. And it's something going into the offseason with recruiting and everything like that it seems like you'd want to get done sooner rather than later, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the pessimist would say that, well, if Cross or somebody else does move on, you want to wait a little longer for the portal window to close. Right. And it's okay with Dre now. They brought in some DBs, some corners, but the kids have already enrolled and transferred in. They can't just turn around and leave right away. So that wouldn't really work out. So that's the pessimist. I think more than anything, due diligence is what's at play here. I think due diligence is always what's at play for Mac. I don't think that there are any ulterior motives. He just wants to make sure they make the right decisions. And if someone is going to move, they want to make sure that that is handled in a manner where it looks best for them as a program. It looks best for whatever coach moves. And I'm okay with that, because this is a very political business, and narratives being what they are nowadays, as opposed to 25 years ago, because everyone's got an opinion, everyone's a citizen commenter. With social media, I understand how they would go about it that way. But at the same time, I also like the fact that Mac didn't dive right into it right after the bowl game. He gave the coaches a week plus off, and they're going to be meticulous about the pros and cons of any decisions that are made. And I think that's good because they have an opportunity to have a big time season next year. I know the Carolina fans are disappointed. They think four in a row and ACC Coastal stunk, and they're trying to devalue what the team did this year. But they had a really good year by and large, and they have a chance to have a phenomenal year next year. So part of that process is right now. It's those discussions that they have. And it's not just about, well, we got to get rid of this guy and bring someone in. Like, we got to weigh the pro and con. Are you going to upgrade if you do make a change and move somebody out or encourage them to take another job? Or can you repair from within? Was it really the corners that was the biggest issue? Who knows? I mean, because there's such a thing called coverage sacks, and there weren't a lot of coverage sacks by North Carolina over the last 4 years. So these are all moving parts that intertwine to give us the whole of the defense for every team. So maybe they think that's what needs fixing more than anything else. Maybe not. We'll find out based on decisions they make. I will tell you this: if Mac believes a change in any other spot on that staff needs to be made, it will be made. There's no doubt about it. He's not getting any younger. He wants to do more than win 9 games. I think that they believe they're primed to do that. They've got a decent schedule next year with South Carolina on neutral site. They host Minnesota. So I think they host App State as well. And then in conference play, they do go to Clemson. So they have a chance next year to have a big year and to make 2022 the bridge that a lot of us thought it was all along. We won't really know how much of a bridge it is until next year, to be honest with you. But I think that's what's at play here, and he's going to make sure that the right decisions are made.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We'll move on to some of the other press conference things that I want to talk about here in a second. I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor on this podcast. They sponsored every UNC football show we've done all year, and that's MyPerfectFranchise.net. So, guys, if you're looking to looking to leave the corporate rat race, gain control of your own income and schedule. What about having unlimited PTO, ability to create income and wealth on your own? Well, guys, look no further than MyPerfectFranchise.net. Andy Ludicky is the founder and owner of My Perfect Franchise. He's also a long-time Rivals member, diehard college football fan, and most importantly, franchise veteran, having done multiple franchises and businesses throughout his career. So what he does is, for those interested in opening a franchise, there's so many different types of franchises you can open. And guys, I know not a lot of New Year's resolutions from last year. A lot of people wanting to kind of maybe step away from what they're doing right now and go chase something they've been wanting to do, maybe even be their own boss. You can do that here with My Perfect Franchise. So what he does is he helps others find their American dream through a very thorough and free consultation process. So if you're interested in potentially opening a franchise, or you just want to learn more about it and see if it's something that's right for you, get in contact with Andy, call him, put your life and career in your own hands. It's 100% free. So what do you really have to lose? Make sure you go check out the link, not only to his website below, to podcast AJ did with Andy a couple months ago as well, that explains not only his business more, but how you can get involved, different types of franchises they're all to open, all that kind of stuff. So make sure you guys check them out, myperfectfranchise.net. Again, every link you need is in the description below. And if you do end up talking to him, make sure you tell him Tar Heel Illustrated sent you. Make sure you talk a little Mac Brown with him as well. He's a massive Texas fan, so obviously got a big soft spot for Mac Brown. Big shout out to Andy. Big shout out to myperfectfranchise.net. And want to thank them for continuing to sponsor the UNC Football Show. So, AJ, another big part of the press conference was obviously hitting on the transfer portal class, as well as some of the early enrollee freshmen they're coming in for the Tar Heels. So 9-member transfer portal class for North Carolina, and also 10 early enrollees. So 19 new players essentially coming into the program next year, which I think is huge. And obviously a lot of those transfers replacing not only some attrition at certain positions, but bringing in some players that, like we've talked about before on this very show, that are going to come in and play some big time minutes, we think, off gate. So I do think it's an interesting class, and I think it's in a lot of ways an exciting class when you look at not only some of the early enrollees coming in as a freshman, but the transfer portal class as well. So you obviously there, a big part of Mac Brown's press conference was hitting on these and kind of running through the transfers and some of the skill sets that they bring. So what were your kind of takeaways from that press conference, and what kind of insights can you give us on these guys that are coming in? Because like I said, I think it is a pretty, exciting class in some ways.
That was the main point of the press conference, was the 9 transfer portal kids. And they have 19 new kids for the spring, which Max said his previous high was 12 when you're at Texas. Mm-hmm. So I like the class, and there are a couple of ways to look at it. first of all, I asked Mac about the value of the class and expectation in that they brought in a lot more accumulated college snaps than they lost. Some of the guys they lost in the secondary, a lot of people were concerned because they had logged a lot of playing time. They were etched in starters, but perhaps a couple of them had sort of reached their peak at North Carolina, and a fresh start for everybody was the best thing. Maybe one or two, or I'm not just speaking specifically in defensive backs here, but kids that left. There were a couple kids that they asked to change positions and they didn't want to, so they sought refuge elsewhere. And both of them have had landing spots. One of them just found a home in the SEC this week. And then maybe a couple kids, it was time to part ways as well. That happens sometimes where both parties are just better suited moving on and starting fresh for the kid and for the program, go out and find somebody that's new and fresh. And that's what they've done. They have brought in kids that are talented and have been productive. Everyone that they brought in, with the exception of the punter from Australia, who is going to basically sit behind Ben Kiernan for a year and learn the game because they don't really know much about the game, which is not uncommon for these Australian punters that come over here. But the other 8, they all are accomplished players. Mari Gaynor from Florida State to me is the most intriguing because they've got to get someone that could set the edge on defense in Gene Chizik's scheme. And I asked Mac about Gaynor he was an inside linebacker at Florida State, so they specifically recruited him to play Jack. He went to UNC to play Jack. He thinks that role will best get him to the NFL. And I asked Mac, I said, okay, here's a guy that you need to have the edge set. He's an inside linebacker. Where's the confidence level in him being able to set the edge? And he said, well, what does an inside linebacker do? It's all about physicality. Finding out blockers, meeting running backs, it's bang, bang, bang. So he thinks the physicality from playing inside will help him at the jack position and setting the edge. Plus it moves Kamen Rucker back to the rush end. So I think that to me is the most significant pickup from the portal. I think the 2 wide receivers, McCollum from Georgia Tech and Trez, they're going to call him Tez.
Tez
from
Walker.
Kent State. Yeah, Tez Walker from Kent State. I think that they're 2 guys that you can spot in the rotation right now. And hell, McCollum had 60 catches playing with 3 different quarterbacks, and none of them are any good.
Yeah, no.
So I know that Jess Sims was okay at times, but that says a lot. I think that receiver room, every August we hear about how deep the receiver room is, and then they play like 5 guys.
Yeah, every year.
I think now they're going to talk about how deep the receiver room, and they're going to play a lot of guys because I think Kobe Pacer's going to be really good. When he played the slot when Downs wasn't playing, he was very productive. They're going to have McCollum. They're going to have Walker. I think J.J. Jones is going to continue to get better. Andre Green's going to break out. And they got a lot of dudes there. So I think, but they helped themselves. They got more at wide receiver now. And I think that there's some unique skills. And they're also been there, done that guys. So they have the been there, done that factor at receiver now that they would have had a little bit of, but not a lot of going into next season. I think that's good for Drake, because Drake has more dudes to throw to, and they'll figure out what the chemistry is all off season. And by the time they get to next season, who are the guys that just pop the most with Drake? They're the ones that are going to get the majority of the snaps. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Yeah. So, and I like the kicker, Noah Burnett just struggled late in the season. And, they lost a couple games. Maybe with a more accurate kicker in those games, they would have won.
Yeah.
So Coe is a guy who's been very successful. This will be his 3rd stop. This will be Derek Allen's 3rd stop. Walker, I guess, started at Central originally, but they didn't play because of the COVID year, so he moved on to Kent State. So it is the way things are now, but I do think the Tar Heels helped themselves a lot. One thing, Jacob, they didn't bring in a defensive lineman. A lot of people are wondering why they didn't bring in a defensive lineman. So I asked Mac kind of that question. I said, you didn't bring in anybody up front defensively, but let's not forget, they have Tamari Fox still. Tamari was not allowed to play this year. He was ineligible because he drank something over the counter last year, was out for the bowl game, and then the NCAA suspended him for the year. But he still has next year. He was on the scout team and wreaking havoc all year. So you have a guy that was not at all a part of your plan for the last 13 months. who now you have. It's almost like getting Tamari Fox out of the portal in some respects. Mm-hmm. It's like adding an experienced guy who, by the way, is the strongest defensive lineman, probably the strongest guy on the team. So adding him, he's a twitchy guy like Rucker. He's an athletic guy, and you're going to see the defensive front go a little bit more twitchy, a little bit more footwork, a little bit more speed. Look at what we just saw the other night. You get these massive offensive linemen, they can't handle the dudes that can juke and get by.
Yeah.
Speed up front, quickness up front is where the game is. I think Carolina's going to trim down a little bit, and they're going to utilize the Ruckers and Tamari Foxes of the world a lot. I think Rucker will play even more snaps next year. So I like what they got from the portal. I think it's a win for Carolina. I think they improved themselves. Look at what went out. Look at what came in. I think an absolute plus for what came in over what left.
Yeah, no doubt. I think, like what you said about the snap counts, just a lot more experience they're bringing in, which is always a positive because, like you said, a lot of guys they lost in the transfer portal didn't really play. If some didn't play at all, so no real surprises on some of that. Yeah, real quickly, I want to before we wrap this show up, I want to talk about the 10 early enrollees for the true freshman class. I'm going to read them out real quick. Wide receiver Paul Billups, linebacker Amari Campbell, offensive lineman DJ Geth, offensive lineman RJ Grigsby, wide receiver Christian Hamilton, jack position you got Jabron Harvey, quarterback Tad Hudson, been committed for a long time, offensive lineman Noah McConnell, linebacker Michael Short, and one more jack with Tyler Thompson. So I always say it's a positive you can get in early. I think we've seen in the past that guys who get in early for the most part have a lot better shot playing when the season comes around. I know not in all cases, but than they do if they come in late, just getting to learn the playbook, going through spring practice, and getting involved with the program a lot earlier than you normally would, I think is a big positive. So thoughts on, we're not going to go in depth on these guys. I know you and Dean have hit on all these guys before anyway, but thoughts on that 10-man class coming in. Cause like I said, I think they're filling in some good holes right there as well.
Yeah. Well, Max says that freshmen need to come in prepared to play right away now. It has changed. You're not going to bring in as many freshmen as you did before because of the portal. So the ones you bring in have to be able to help you in some manner or be close to helping you in some manner. And I think special teams is one of those areas. I also think, by the way, I should have said with the portal kids, I think they get a little stronger in special teams. I believe Max said they played 5 walk-ons in all their special teams in the bowl game. And so they need to get scholarship guys in on special teams, and they'll be better in coverage, which they weren't bad, but they need to break some stuff. They need to make game-changing plays. And if you have 3-star recruited athletes who had lots of Power 5 offers all across the board on special teams, as opposed to hardworking walk-ons, the odds are a little bit higher that you're going to have more success with the higher recruited kids because they're just simply more talented. That's common sense. So that's, I think, what they're getting also from the portal. And they did recruit some of those kids with the idea that they will also play special teams. They're not all coming in as starters. Mac has changed his approach in the last couple of years with respect to that. But the kids that are coming in, the 10 enrollees, each of them have a different plan. Tad Hudson's obviously not coming in thinking he's going to win the job right away and play quarterback. But I do think that they think they're going to get some stuff from some of the other guys. Guys like Tyler Thompson, they're really high on him. I think that he could at least be on the field with special teams. If you saw Deuce Caldwell this past year, how he helped them out. And some of those other guys, I think you can see most of these dudes getting on the field and helping in that respect. And they get a little bit of experience. They can help the club. They can rest a starter who doesn't have to play on special teams as well. I think it's a really good situation. Another little news item, too, is don't be surprised if Carolina doesn't actually have a spring game this year. Spring games might be going away. And you and I have talked about this before. The practice that they had last year, the second practice, July 30th, it was an open practice for the fans. I think you're going to see something like that in college football across the board, in part because everyone's bringing in so many kids from the portal, and they're bringing in a lot of freshmen early now, all these new faces. You need that extra practice.
Yeah. So
a spring game, I don't think there's a ton of value in spring games. I've covered a lot of spring games before where I've written stories about some guy who broke out.
And never plays again,
and you never type his name again.
Yeah.
So where's the value? I think if you're a true football fan and you've been to a lot of practices, you're right. I love practice. I'm a drill junkie. I'm a drill junkie in football and basketball. When I covered a little bit of Major League Baseball, I used to go out there early and watch major leaguers take infield practice 3 hours before the first pitch. I love that kind of stuff. And if you're a real big-time football fan, you can learn a lot about kids and drills. You can learn about their want, about their go-go. You can see their skills and compare them to everybody right there. And also, it's just kind of neat to watch the efficiency of a practice as well. So they may do some kind of modified short scrimmage, but a lot of them will probably be a practice. So my guess is that's what's going to happen. They do not have a spring game date yet. I'm suspecting August or April 15th is my guess. It'll probably be. They'll have to work some things out with the ACC network and stuff too. But with so many new faces, it wouldn't surprise me if they move it back a little bit because they want a little bit more off-season body prep time, especially if they're going to trim down some dudes up front and change their body types a little bit. So you want them to be a little bit more where they need to be by the time spring practice hits than otherwise. So, so I'm excited about looking at 19 new guys in the spring, and especially some of the ones that they're new and you expect them to step in and help big time right away.
Yeah, real quickly, I almost forgot to ask you this. We'll wrap it up right after this. Corey Gaynor announced that he's coming back. Was able to get the medical waiver for him. How big is that? Because I think that is a big, just getting him back in that center position. I thought he was a pretty consistent player this year on the offensive line. So I think that's a big positive for the program as well.
Well, and a leader, and he gets 2 straight years being healthy, hopefully.
Yeah, that's big.
That's not something that's been a regular occurrence for him throughout his career. The NCAA, we kind of suspected all along, we've said this on the podcast before, that he would get the waiver because the NCAA is pretty much giving
they're throwing him out now, man. They're throwing him out.
Yeah. So, in 8 years, Stetson Bennett will be back in Georgia for his 19th season. And, if we're winning 12 national championships.
What is he like? He's 30 years old, I think. Something like that.
I have no idea. He's not yet Chris Wanke's age when Wanke won a Heisman, but he's getting up there. I think it's big because you have a leadership guy and somebody who should be better next year as well. And he didn't grade out great, but I'm not I don't buy into PFF offensive line grades a lot because a lot of times they don't know the assignments. They don't
really know what's being asked. Yeah. They
don't know what calls are being shifted during, in pre-snap or anything like that. So I think it's big when you get a kid who's played that many snaps, who's that old, who's that mature, and a guy who doesn't do interviews with us because he doesn't care. He doesn't want the limelight. He just wants to play football. He just wants to chew glass and play football.
Yeah,
so you gotta love having dudes like that. And what it does is it gives them flexibility with Willie Lampkin, the kid from Coastal Carolina they brought in. He was all conference, all Sun Belt at center this year, but he was a guard the previous 2 years. So he's already played at a high level at center and at guard. So if anything happens to Gaynor, you have Lampkin back there. Remember this past year, if anything would have happened to Gaynor, you had Brian Anderson, who was a 3-year starter behind him. So they have depth at center, which is huge, because they got Lampkin behind Gaynor now, but Lampkin also as a guard, and you've got a lot of options there at guard with Monolith leaving. I kind of thought when they brought in Lampkin that was the replacement for Monolith, who, by the way, is going to stay in school, finish grad school, but he's not going to play football anymore. He's decided to retire. Yeah. So I think that Gaynor was big, but getting Lampkin's big too, because you can never have too many centers.
Yeah, that's for sure, man. That's for sure. We'll go ahead and wrap it up. Here, AJ, another episode of the UNC Football Show. We appreciate you guys watching as always. Make sure you like, share, subscribe with that notification bell as well for more insight and analysis on the Dre Bly situation, all the other insights and stuff we're hearing around the UNC football program. Make sure you go ahead and head on over to TarHillIllustrated.com. Links in the description below, and go ahead and sign up to be a premium member. Just $8.33 a month. Great time to do so always. And make sure you check out myperfectfranchise.net as well. Links in the description. Check out those podcasts too to learn more about Andy's awesome project he's got going on over there. Really, really awesome stuff. Again, I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. We appreciate you watching as always. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks.